Hi there, and welcome to Skyship Stories. I've got an admission to make. When Rod told me this story, I was amazed, and it was the inspiration for me to convince Rod to set down all of his experiences for the whole series. In a way, we've saved the best till last. It's my favourite of all of his stories. It's also been the hardest one for Stefan and I to visualise and animate. I had no idea how snow could cause a problem for skyships on the ground, and as Rod explains, how close they got to disaster. It's a very seasonal episode for winter, and it's also the last in this series. So sit back, fasten your seatbelts as we vector the engines, push full power and up ship. Welcome to episode 8 of Skyship Stories.
Now, do you think that, you mentioned in one of your emails about the ships living outside all year round. Would you find that, would it be certain weathers that they wouldn't be able to, or would be more of a hindrance? We talked about airships being sort of not necessarily just northern hemisphere because they were down in Australia, but are they suitable for really cold weather?
The two weather conditions which really cause you problems on the mast are really strong winds. The AD 500 was destroying itself on the mast in high winds, and they opted to pull the rip.
Yeah.
Airship Industries later lost ships on the mast in severe gales. And the problem is, maybe a day before or 2 days before, you've got to make the decision, we don't risk it, let's get it in the hangar before the wind gets up to 10 knots, because otherwise we can't get it in the hangar.
Mm-hmm.
So strong winds are a problem.
Yeah.
The 500 and the 600 were officially cleared to 80 knot winds on the mast. Now that's hurricane force.
Right. Yeah.
That's a serious wind.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, a ship was destroyed on the mast at Cardington.
Mm-hmm.
And the other problem is precipitation. Rain isn't too bad, it runs off. Snow doesn't run off. Snow accumulates, and snow is heavy.
Yeah.
So for the life of me, I can't remember whether it was 601 or 502, but one of the ships at Cardington was out on the mast, and the winds for some time had ruled out hangar entry. And then they forecast snow one night, and we couldn't get it into the hangar because there was already a wind blowing, which made it impossible to put it in the hangar. So what you do is, apart from adding antifreeze to the water ballast in winter and all that kind of stuff, you rig a snow rope over the ship. You can climb up the mast, and right along the top of the ship is a man line. So a guy can go up there in a harness with a great big clip like a window cleaner on a tower block, and he could walk along the top of the ship hooked onto this safety line. I never did that, but it's apparently like walking on an airbed. It's sort of bouncy, despite the fact the pressure is only just above atmospheric. It's okay, you can walk. So you rig a snow rope. You have a long, fine line, and right in the middle of it, the mast rider grabs that, climbs up the mast, goes up onto the top of the ship, taking this line, and it is left draped across the top of the ship down to the ground each side.
Yeah.
Now, if snow starts to accumulate, you can put crew on each end, and you can slice the snow off the bag like cutting cheese.
Yeah.
That's the theory. If the temperature is all right, you can also spray water over it.
Of course, yeah.
You can't spray a high-pressure jet from a fire hose. The envelope isn't built for that. But what you can do is spray water on the top, and hopefully the snow will wash off. But that would be a dumb thing to do if the temperature is -1.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. So I was duty pilot one night when we were faced with this ship out on the mast and snow forecast. So we took all the precautions we could. We rigged a snow line. We doubled the mast watch. So instead of one guy, we had two. We warned people that, it was possible there might be trouble in the night, and fine. I went to bed, and at about 1 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and it was the mast watchman to say, "It's snowing like heck over here." So I leap in the car and I rush to Cardington. A crew chief has been called out as well, and I'd given the word, call everybody. Call everybody and his dog. Get them all to the airfield. We're going to need them. And when I got there, the ship was really heavy. As soon as it starts accumulating, the mast watchmen are taking bags out. And then they're dumping 300 kilos or whatever it is of water ballast. And the ship is still heavy. It's sitting right down on the wheel, heavy. So as soon as people started arriving, they started on the old snow line, sawing the snow off. And it was helping. It doesn't clear the snow off the horizontal fins. The only thing you can do with those is spray water.
Yes, of course. Exactly. And you've got such a large surface area.
Yeah, very large.
Yes.
I mean, it's difficult to appreciate how large they are unless you've seen them close to. We're talking about the floor area of a house.
Yes.
Each fin.
Yeah.
So we had an old Green Goddess fire engine filled to the gills, and the lads were spraying water over the bag and over the fins. And it was still snowing, and the ship was still getting heavier, and we were in trouble. And it's hard work. It's tiring, hard work. Pulling that. And of course, you can't just saw away because you might slice a hole in the bag, which would be very embarrassing and expensive. So the guys worked and they worked and they worked until their arm muscles were screaming, and then another 20 guys would take over, and it got heavier and it got heavier, and there was no sign of the snow stopping. And the ship now starts to get top heavy because all of that weight is up top, and the ship starts to list to one side.
Gosh.
More and more and more. And eventually, one of the prop ducts was touching the ground. Now, have a look at a picture of a Skyship 500. Just think what angle that is.
Yes.
We were in trouble. But as often happens, the wind had reduced in that snow shower. It wasn't a blizzard. It was just falling snow. And in the end, I reached the point where it was clear we either put the ship in the hangar, whatever the risk, or we watched it being destroyed. So I ordered the hangar doors opened, which takes a while.
Yes.
And fortunately, it was on a mast truck, not on one of the sort of rigid fixed masts. And we started walking it up to the hangar. And the prop disc was dragging along the ground. And there's an apron in front of the hangars, which is tarmac. It wasn't too bad while we were on grass, but when we get to the tarmac, there's the most horrible scraping noise as this very, very expensive propeller duct is dragging across the tarmac with the ship all over on one side. And the wind wasn't lined up with the hangar, so it's trying to blow the tail of the ship round into the door frame.
Good grief.
So against all the rules, instead of the mast truck driving up the yellow line right down the middle, the mast truck was right at the upwind side. And we had everybody we could find pulling on the rope, the quarter line, to pull the tail into alignment with the hangar. And we couldn't get it in line. We went in through the hangar door sideways with one door frame there and the other one there. And the duct dragging along the ground. And we got it in with a few feet to spare.
Gosh.
And as soon as it's in the hangar, of course, there is no wind. And we could then put the mast truck back on the centre line and drag the wreck into the middle. All this time, we're still trying to work the snow line to get the snow off to try and make the damn thing lighter. And as the snow starts to come off, we can now start putting some ballast on.
Gosh.
And there were snowdrifts in the hangar by the time we'd finished. The prop duct was damaged quite badly. But the ship survived, and when the engineers checked it over, everything was okay. None of the fins had been taken out of alignment. Everything, all they had to do was double check that we hadn't bent any of the drive shafting and replace that propeller and duct.
Gosh.
And we got away with it. But it was a close run thing. I was not very far away from saying, "Oh dear, what a pity. I'm going to have to pull the ripcord and throw away £25,000 worth of helium and leave this thing looking like a collapsed marquee in the middle of the airfield, which would have made me very popular. And that's the only time in my career I've ever willfully damaged a ship by damaged an aircraft. We dragged it across the ground and had the chief pilot phone me up and say thank you. So snow is a problem for airships. You've got to find a way of getting, and people say, can't you just blow warm air into the ballonets? Can't you heat the helium?
Yes.
Right? That might be the answer. That might not work at -50 in the Arctic, but it should work in sort of ordinary European temperatures, if you like.
And when you think about, if they're thinking about concepts with Arctic flights and, these ice road trucker sort of alternatives, and what you've just explained is something, because the weather is changing and becoming more extreme. So these are the things that they will have to think about in designs and concepts. As you said, just the size and the volume of the envelope, you start getting a little bit of snow on that, and that's all weight.
Although, of course, in flight, the snow should blow off. The way that you de-ice some aeroplane wings is to have an inflatable rubber boot, they call it, a long tube of rubber on the leading edge, and you blow air into it, and then you allow it to, and you blow air, and it cracks the ice off.
Okay.
An airship is the biggest de-icing boot in the world. The bag is constantly doing this.
Of course.
So officially, the CAA wouldn't permit us to fly in icing conditions, but icing wouldn't really be that much of a problem. The bag itself would tend to de-ice itself as it flexed. The ice would just slide off. You'd get some on the fins, maybe, but that should be copable with. We're not talking about 3 inches of ice or anything like that. No, it's when it's on the ground that these weather conditions are a real problem.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that an airship has that no other kind of aircraft have is endurance. We carried a minimum fuel reserve of 100 kilograms. If you really were careful and you weren't too heavy, you might even dump some water ballast. You could stay up overnight on 100 kilograms.
Gosh.
So it may be that if the weather is terrible on the ground, the thing to do is get airborne.
Yes.
Which sounds back to front, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right.
That might be the solution.
Thank you very much indeed. You've given such a fantastic insight.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and the series. This episode brings to a close the first series of Skyship stories, but don't worry, we'll be back with more. I want to say a huge thank you to Rod Burgess, who shared his extensive knowledge and experience with us, and also Stefan Niemeyer, who painstakingly used his talents to produce some of those wonderful 3D renderings which brought the episodes to life. We'll be adding more content to our channel, so please do subscribe to be notified of new content. Until next time, keep vectoring those engines.